Cord, I was asking our person who runs our email list. I'm like, last night I was like, hey, how many people are signed up for this? And he's like, 593. Well, that'll be a good gathering. I wrote this whole campaign and organized this workshop to do in December. And then we decided not to do it then, but to wait, partially because I then decided to launch the challenge. And I know many of you are in the challenge through the holidays in January. It's still happening. The challenge is still going on. And so we delayed this till now, and I'm really glad we did. It seems very appropriate to talk about pivoting right now. So I think I'll start. We got over 100 people here. Good enough. Here we go. You guys ready? Does everyone have what you need? You're going to need something to write on. I like colored pencils, or colored pens, but you know, pencil, paper, whatever you've got, notepad, iPad, I don't care. All right, pivoting. I used to be a basketball player. Actually, I still am. I'm recovering a knee injury, but I love basketball. My dad played and he was a captain in high school and a captain in college. So I learned the word pivot. I would say it was probably one of those first 5-letter words I learned. I probably knew the word pivot by the time I was 4 years old. So I'm going to talk from an experiential place about pivoting, and I think it'll help land, because I know this term gets thrown around a lot. I have a whole bunch of slides. I also have my notepad. So I think what I'll do first is go into slides, and then I'll go into my notepad. We'll do a little Q&A. I'll be done with my stuff within 45 minutes to 55 minutes, and then we'll do Q&A, and I'll stay on if anyone wants to do Q&A. If you've never been in a coaching program with Yoga Healer or with us, we essentially help people achieve their goals, whole life goals. And I live that. I've lived that for 20 years here at Yoga Healer. And the invitation today is basically to take very good notes on what we do so that you can have a very good conversation with one of our coaches after the session. And that's free. There's no cost with that. Our coaches are really good at directing people to more resources that we've built over the last couple decades within our site to help you achieve your goals in your life. So a lot of what we're doing today is like helping you get really clear on what exactly that is. Exactly what are you doing next? And what are you gonna need in order to do that? Yeah, is everyone in the right place? Was that the conversation you're wanting to have? Okay, great, good and great and done. Anna, I just saw Anna's here. Anna Berkelmans is here. Yay, Anna, she's Yoga Healer Tribe in the white. She'll answer questions in the chat as we go. And that's a wonderful thing for me. And it's a good thing for you too. So if you're having questions as we go, Anna's the one who's going to be getting back to you there. All right, here we are, pivot. So I'm going to emphasize this word about living your better life now. Some of you are good at putting off your desires till later, like what you really want to do with your life. Yeah, if that's you, just type in the chat. Yeah, I do that. I put that off till later, or however you want to acknowledge that, because that's a pattern that we're going to want to really edge up against today. Is it you want to live your better life now? Now is what there is. So we work with the now. This is a little bit about me. This is what gives me some authority to tell you all the things I will say very emphatically in the next hour. I started yogahealer.com in 2001 and started to build an online presence and community over the last couple of decades. I've developed courses that help people succeed in their bodies and in their lives, in their families, in their communities, and their impact in their careers, and financially as well. So a background of where I've been, I came more up through helping people in their bodies in particular. I recognized pretty early on that if humans could become more conscious, that our whole planet would be better off, and we'd be better off with each other. So how do we become more conscious? We do that through our bodies. We do that through our minds. And then what happens is as you start to become more efficient actually in your physiology, is it opens up worlds of potential, worlds of time and potential. So then you can do more in your life. And that's what happens is then you start to have bigger goals in your life. And that's what led to that last thing that I wrote, which is Master of You. We also have a 2-year course that helps people implement the book. We find it takes 2 years. So what we do is an easy, it's effective, and it works. And I'm really devoted to it. I've just seen people achieve goals that they never dreamed that they could have achieved. All right, so let's talk about pivoting. Let's in here. I brought my basketball picture here. So pivoting, I'm going to take it off screen share. I just want you guys to see me for this. Okay, so pivoting. So when you catch a ball in basketball, right? What happens? You guys can type it in the chat. I can see the chat. What happens? You got the ball. What's the first thing that you do once you got the ball? This is really important. I know, right? Like, who the heck knew we were going to talk? Yeah, good. Carrie's like, absorb it, decide, pivot. You look, you do all these things. Yeah, actually, the first thing you do is like you get stable. Like, here I am, right? Because you can pivot with either foot, but you've got to decide which foot you're going to pivot with. So before you make that decision, you've got to be centered. You've got to be grounded. Like, here I am. What are my opportunities? I could shoot, I could pass, I could dribble. I could just pivot until I decide what to do. But if I'm going to pivot, if I'm going to move one foot, I'm committed. At that point, I'm committed, right? And what I see too much of what happens, like, and you see this with like younger basketball players, is they get the ball and they break all the rules and then they get called a foul. Like, they might walk with it, or they might pivot with one foot and then pivot with another foot, right? And then the whistle blows and then the other team gets the ball. So that didn't work so good. And that happens in life, doesn't it? Where we try to pivot and we're not grounded. We're not centered. And then the dream that we're trying to pivot to doesn't manifest. It doesn't happen. And that's a problem. So the first thing that we do is we get centered. And I'm going to show you today how you get centered and what your options actually are, what your options right now actually are. Because the better you get at that part, then the more successful you'll be. At least the ball doesn't turn over and go to the other team. And now you got to get the ball back, right? Now you've got a chance at getting to your goal. Okay. So that's a little bit on pivoting. It's like the first thing that you do is you realize you've got the ball and now you have choices. And the next thing when you actually go to pivot is you're lifting one foot off the ground and you're moving it. And you're moving it into the unknown. You're going from the known into the unknown. And that's scary. And some people get really ungrounded in that. And that's also where they lose the ball, is they freak out, right? So you've got to be grounded and then you've got to pivot. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's what I'm going to help you start to do in your life. So we got to get really clear on what is the pivot that you're trying to make. And what are some of the choices that you actually have? They're not pipe dream choices. They're like your real options here. Because the pipe dream choices is, you know, like you hear a lot of this in like the law of attraction and manifestation. You can do anything. And it's like, yes, and you can fail too. And it's hard, especially if you don't have a good track record with doing great things, then it's harder. So we're going to get you into the options of like what's actually quite real, what's quite real for you. Okay. Are we good on, we all know what pivoting is now, like from where the word comes from? Good enough? Okay, great. So I like this definition around to turn on a central point. It's really good for you to think about that there's a center, and this is the teaching in yoga. The center goes through the crown of your head and it's a plumb line straight down through your root, which is right plumb square in the center of your body. It's like, really, if you want to get technical, it's between your anus and your genitals on the downside. So there's a midline. And yoga, for those who study yoga, you've learned how to center your awareness on your midline. So you know where your sides, your parts, your extremities are in relationship to the center. So we're going to do that today too. And we're going to do that in terms of your strengths and your weaknesses and your opportunities right now and your threats. And you're going to get centered on actually where you are in relation to it. Those things are like your limbs. And you want to know where you are in relationship to your center. So that's just what pivoting means. And today we're on a quest for your pivot. And to get there, I just want to give you just a quick checklist here of some things that you might need to pivot around. So where do you need to pivot? Body, home, relationships, goals, career, purpose, finances. So you might end up with a list that's like, a few things that are just check boxes. Like, what are your check boxes? And the reason I put it here is, and I just check some of the boxes is it might help you see like, no, those aren't my boxes. Well, good. What are your boxes? We all have different boxes. Some of you, it's like, it's every damn one of those boxes, Kate. Like, so if so, no problem. Just be honest with yourself. So where do you need to improve? And you might even give some of these like a double or triple underline if it's like really, like you really do. The writing's on the wall. I had a time, it was around, when was it? Let me think about this exactly. It was like 2000, it was around 2008, 2009. And I gave myself, I think it was roughly 12 months to pivot my business online. So I was early to the game. And we'll get into that a bit with strengths and weaknesses. So I was a bit early to the game. And by that, I mean, like I had already launched a good online program. I already had good online revenue by then, but I still had a brick and mortar business building, a yoga studio. I still had a lot of clients I was seeing in person. I was flying around teaching workshops. I was not entirely working online. And I gave myself a deadline. Like I needed to improve to have the lifestyle I wanted. And this to me is a really big point. Is you want to design your life. You want to design your life. So when I'm asking you these questions of how do you want to pivot, you want to keep in mind that you get to be the one who designs your life, and you get to bring the importance of this into the now. Into now. Like how do you need to design your life next? And there's a bit of like allowing that, and that things can happen fast. Like let's just allow for that. Let's just allow that possibility. Hey, Anna, someone's drawing on the screen. Not sure who, not sure how you can block them. If anyone's drawing on the screen, I think we have a, what's it called when you have a hacker? I think we have that going on. Not sure. Maybe just look through, sorry, you guys. This is part of Zoom in the modern age. If it gets out of control, we'll figure it out. And you can maybe just ask Lori for help. All right. So what I have found so much through working with people is that often the everyday gets in the way of what's really trying to happen next. And this is the image in Master of You in my book that I used to draw that, right? Where it's like, we're so involved with all of our current relationships and with the people in our life and the to-dos and the career and the appointments that are on the calendar and how we're currently using time, that it can be quite hard to recognize how to pivot or to make time to actually pivot. So today we'll also go into what that looks like so that when we leave here, you have some ideas of like what dream you really want to live. Because if we keep putting everything off till later, right? Later never comes, tomorrow never comes. So we've got to start to change how we use time in real time. So everyone's clear now, right? You've got your list, you've got your check boxes, you know what you're going to need. So the next question really is like, what does it start to look like for you to live a bigger dream? For you to expand into who you need to become next. And this is where pivoting gets really quite crucial, is because who you are now hasn't done whatever those boxes that you've checked are. And so you can't be the same person. There's a lot that's been written on this. I think a good book on this is like Personality Isn't Permanent. That's a good book on particularly on how our behaviors and our habits have to change, how our skills and the tools that we need have to change in order for us to achieve bigger goals. So when we get clear on that, that's what we want to identify today is like, you see that second circle of like, what are your needed skills? What are those? That's what we need to identify. We don't want to assume that we already have what it takes. Has anyone ever done that? You set a goal. You're like, I need to pivot. I assume I have what it takes to do that. And then it doesn't fall, and then it doesn't work. It doesn't actually happen. And usually when that's the case, there's something that's missing. And so I go into the process assuming that I have whatever it takes to do what I've done to this point right now. I have the habits, I have the skills, I have the tools, I have the resources, I have the relationships in order to do exactly what I've done this far. That makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Evidence, got the evidence, right? Evidence of success, got it. That's what I've done to this point. So if I want to do something bigger and better in any of these categories, right? Body, finance, home, impact, career, relationships. If I want to experience something I haven't experienced yet, I can assume I don't have what it takes yet. And that's just being honest. And honesty to me is like a really great strategy with bigger goal accomplishment. Like as honest as you can be with what's really going on, the more successful that you'll be. So we don't want to underestimate or overestimate. So getting your mind wrapped around like, okay, what are maybe some of the skills I'm going to need? What are some of the tools? And you can write those words down like skills, tools, relationships, resources, or assets. And that can help you know exactly how to pivot in a way that is grounded. And that's really what we're after. Remember, because if you don't pivot grounded, then it's a turnover, ball goes to the other team. Now you got to get it back. So it can set you back. All right. We're going to go to a new screen share. And if there's questions in the chat, you can interrupt me, Anna, along the way. All right, good. Now you're seeing my screen. So we're going to go through a few of these things. All right, so here's the pivot, right? And you can go in a number of directions. But some part of you has to stay centered. Now, a really good strategy I found is that first you want to center, and then you want to improve before pivoting. You want to get good at being centered before you move. Like even in a job you hate, you want to get really good at that job before you leave it. That kind of thing. You know, if like the last diet you tried failed, like you want to get really good at that before you just jump to another one. Jumping around in Ayurvedic language is called vata vitiation. And it's like the chief cause of disease, really. It's just like too much moving around with not enough being really centered in what's working. So getting centered, like centered before improve. It's a good mindset to start to have of like, what, and I'm just going to keep asking you questions. And these are the answers that you're going to go. If you book a conversation, which I highly recommend you do. So yogahealer.com/conversation, book a conversation and go over this so that we can help make sure that you're pivoting in a smart way. The question next is, what do you need to improve? What do you need to improve? Before you even think of pivoting, like what do you need to get? And it doesn't have to be big things. Does it? And I'd like to see in the chat too. So if you're like, oh yeah, I know I need to improve this before I try something new, or before I leave my center with half of my body weight, right? Before I move. What needs to get better? So what's interesting too is that word improve. I like etymology. I'm always curious of like, well, where did that word come from? So PROU, which is the root of improve, means to profit. Isn't that fascinating? To be in profit. So profit in a business is not the same as owner's pay. So if you're a business, if you have a business and you're the owner and you get money for owning the business, maybe you also work in the business, right? That's owner's pay. Profit's something else. And it's fascinating to me. Like profit comes from a few things. It comes from efficiencies, like getting more efficient at what it is that you're doing. That's a great way to increase your profit. And another way is to grow, right? Where you're growing sales more than expenses, right? So you're growing and you're becoming more efficient. That's improvement. And that looks a lot like that last slide, right? Of the bigger you, the more skills, the more tools, like you're becoming a bigger version of yourself. You're becoming more capable. So my question to you is like, where do you need to improve? Because the profit there, and this is where I find like Ayurveda and yoga help me a lot, understand more of, just the world of finance and business is where you improve, you grow in yourself as a base of resource. And then you can use that, you can apply that capacity in really an infinite number of directions. And that goes back to that first image, right? You've got a lot of options. So the more you improve, the more options you have, the easier it is to pivot. Because you could pivot here, you could pivot there, you could pivot there, and any of those things can be successful. Okay, so everyone's got some good places that you know that you could improve. Good, great. And we know that this is interesting too, is if we look at it energetically in the body, to become centered, that's when you catch the ball. Before you pivot, you know where you're standing. Now, in yoga, there's a really basic principle, and it's root to rise. So you get rooted in order to rise. So if you want to like shoot a hook shot, now that you are on the ground, right? And you just want to shoot a hook shot, right? Now you can rise up because you're grounded. So if you focus on improving before pivoting, you don't run the risk of just moving in different directions from a place where you don't really know your best plan. So you root to rise. Your most profit is going to come, like your most capacity building in yourself is going to come from being rooted, and then exploring your options, and then looking up and around of like, where should I go next? Okay, so then this is the thing. How do you decide where to go next? So you want to orient towards your desire, that designing your life. It's your life. You get to live how you want to live. You have unique goals, and your unique goals are multidimensional, right? Like just career, that doesn't work. Just family, that doesn't work. Just body, that even caps out. Believe me, I've met the like just body people. I lived in yoga studios for like a good 20 years where like people really, 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 really focus on their body, right? That caps out. Just impact, that caps out. So it's like we're multidimensional. We need to be able to check lots of different boxes in our lifestyle design. And I would argue that it's becoming somewhat more complex right now because there's so many options. There's so many different types of careers. Like if you look back at 100 years ago, like what were some of the options for women in work? Right? So mother, that's automated and unpaid. Nurse, teacher. Little bit of office work, secretary, like starting to kind of open up a little bit, maybe in certain areas that are progressive, but like not much. Cook. So now there's 10,000 different job postings or job titles alone on Indeed, right? Like there's so much complexity. There's complexity with homes and home ownership. You can live in a tiny house, you can live in a McMansion, right? There's so many options, and you've got to follow your desire to find your way. What's interesting about the word desire, so it's a French word, of desire of the Father. This means that like your desire, father, if you look into the etymology of father, it goes into progenitor, right? The masculine form of how genes get furthered into the next generation, forward pro into genes generation. So what is the root of your desire? Like what you really want to do, like what your unique life, you get to do you get to do your family the way your life, if you're alone, like however your partner, whatever that is, like what is your vision of your life? And you want to be able to take a deathbed perspective. Like when you look back, what are the big decisions you need to make right now to make sure the rest of it plays out the way that it could from that bigger desire? So there's, depending on your spirituality, your religion, your lack thereof, whatever it is, atheism, like whatever it is, like what does that mean? Like what does that mean that desire comes from somewhere? It seems to be naming a universal force of intelligence, something like that. That desire is not random. That's what the word means. That's what the etymology of that means. So for you in your life, like what are your deeper desires? And I want you to write them down. We have a few check boxes. Now with your check boxes, like flesh those out a little bit, because that's what you're going to go over with Anna in your conversation. It's like, what is fleshed out there? Like, what I'm saying here is like your desire matters. It actually comes from somewhere that's sacred and has your best interest at heart. So your higher desires are holy in themselves, right? And that means they're of the whole, that they take care of the whole part of your life, not just this piece or that piece, but the whole of your life. Because we're trying to figure out how you need to pivot. We want to make sure you're grounded. We want to make sure it's your pivot, yours, not hers or his or theirs or your mother's who may have passed 20 years ago, like yours. What do you want? What do you want for your life? Okay. So often in here, in just deciding what you want, and I can't tell you how many times, I feel like how many times a week this happens where I'm in a conversation and people won't let themselves feel what they want because they don't know how they would get it. So it's very common to put the how in the way. It becomes like this big boulder in the way of what you want because you don't know how you'd get it. And so what you'll find yourself saying is like, well, I want to retire in 10 years. Well, okay. So and I don't really like my work right now because I don't like how I'm spending my time right now. Okay. Or I want to get divorced after the kids go to college. And these are two I've heard both of these this week. So I'm not like making this up. Like this is just stuff that I hear, which is why it's really important to talk to a coach. So someone can help you hear how you're thinking, essentially. Because anyone who's had delayed gratification, usually that happens if you were a child raised with other children and not everybody could have what they wanted at the time. So if you were told to wait, and that's fine. Like that's an excellent parenting strategy so that everybody survives. Like, yes, there's a good reason for that. But for you and your holy desires, right? For your one precious life here. What do you want? And one of the ways it's like, I can't wait until, I love that sentence stem. Like, I can't wait until what? Let's just flesh that out, write that down, get super clear. Like what exactly is that? I can't wait until what? And there can be a real tendency I've found in this, there's like a squirm factor. So I'm going to say a lot, and we're going through this at a fairly rapid clip, but some of these questions you're going to want to sit with for a couple of days or a couple of weeks to really get clear on like, what are the things that you delay your gratification on? Because chances are there's a lot of energy in there for pivot. There's a lot of potential energy that instead it's like it's going into resistance, and it could be going into potential. Okay, so we're not going to do, that's my no sign. We're not going to do the how before the what. We're going to put the what before the how. The purpose of how is strategy. So the purpose of how is strategy. The purpose of what is getting clear on what we're building strategy towards. So we don't need to put the cart in front of the horse. It doesn't make sense. The thing doesn't go. We got to get super crystal clear on exactly what is the what, and the what is connected to your desire. So if you have things down there on your pivot list that you don't really want, that's not it. And you'll make the process way harder. The ball will turn over. We'll go to the other team. Okay, let's take a little quick question break. What questions are arising so far before we go further?
So Agnes is saying that she followed her mother's direction, even though she has passed for over 30 years, and she doesn't know what she wants. And she also, I prompted her, how do you want to feel? She wants to feel successful. And when she tried to step out, she's had some setbacks, financially and emotionally when she's tried, okay. So we can start there.
Yeah. So that can be a question then. If we know we want to feel successful, then we can go to strategy. So it's just, then the hard work is strategy, and strategy is its own thing. And we'll go there, and we'll go there next. We'll go there next. What you might get more clear on with your desires, everyone is like, what will have changed? Like, how will you know you've arrived? So say success. How would you know you're successful? What's the metric? What's the measurement? So if everyone can write in the chat, like, what's the measurement? If your desire is fulfilled, how will you know when it's fulfilled? What's the metric? How would it be measured? So let's say there's a body goal and someone's 50 pounds overweight. It could be like, I'm at my ideal weight. I only have, I have the amount of fat that my body really can use in real time. And I wake up with energy every morning. I like jump out of bed. That's pretty measurable. It's not exact, but it's like good enough for me. And it's not a number. So that's all. Most metrics have number, but for weight loss ones, I don't need a number. I want more of exactly what's the morning going to be like, and how much extra are you carrying? Who needs help with their what? Because we can do one or two of these and just get clear on like what. How would you know when you arrived? What's the end? What's the next desired result? And it doesn't have to be the end all be all. It's like the next milestone. So the more exact you can make them. Okay, I like Nicole's. Eliminate private clients and have the same or more income to cover bills. Great. That's a great next pivot, right? And so the question then and strategy is going to be like, well, where's the income going to come from with that? Unless that's already solved for. And if it is, then that can be part of that. So less specific, right, is Natalie's relationship with finance and money. Like, how would you know if you decide like, this is what I want, like, what exactly is it? What exactly is going to change with the relationship with finance or money? Is it you're going to be making twice as much money? Is it going to be you'll have X amount of money in mutual funds? Is it you'll own a house? Is it like, what is it for you? And this is where you guys, like, you don't want to get tripped up by what other people want. You just want to know what it is for you. Like what's true to you? And then make it specific and exact, because if it's not exact, then we can't get that clear on exactly what the pivot is, on exactly what the strategy is. So Donna's have a sense of joy in my work. How would you know? You know, and it might be like 4 out of 5 days I leave work with a smile on my face, right? And then you can start tracking and saying like, well, how's that going right now? Maybe it's 2 out of 5 right now. Okay, well, how can I make it 4 out of 5? So you want to make it so that you know exactly when you arrived. Okay, new network for my work as an independent contractor will provide adequate income. Okay, so that's a bit of that mega strategy of how you'll get to the income. So if it's just an income goal, if that's the what, is like, I want to increase my income by 30%, great. Then the how, the network might be part of the how. See how it gets tricky? Like we so mix up the what and the how, and then we don't put measurables on the how. Like this is like total, this is why we're doing this, right? It's because it's not that straightforward, and it's not that easy how people become very, how certain people become more high achievers. Someone brought to my attention, I thought it was the funniest thing. I was on a walk with a neighbor and they're like, you're a super high achiever. I was like, I am. And I get it, like from the outside, like, yeah. And I never think of myself that way. I just have studied this for a long time. So I know how to do it. So I just kind of work it. It doesn't feel like it's no harder than living life any other way. In fact, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier, but it takes training, just like anything takes training. Most people don't invest in this kind of training. My daughter was just telling me, we're in Mexico right now at our house down here. And she's doing some version of like online school right now in an in-person school. And she was telling me that what she's trying to learn in health class. And I was like, people tell me that in Body Thrive, they learn what they should have learned in health class. I was like, what are you actually learning in health class? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's a problem, because you guys should be working on habits, and focus, because your whole generation is screwed for focus. Like that's a big game over even at this point. Like anyone who's introduced to an iPad at age 2, like good luck. There's things that we should have learned. And if you want to be a successful person in designing your own life, like having a system to do that in real time, that you're applying in real time and you know how you're doing it, right? That helps, because then you can also improve the system. So what we're getting into a bit today is like how to give yourself some organized, structured thinking about this. A big part of it, what we found in Coaching Master Review for years, because I had a coaching program for that well before I wrote the book on it, was that a lot of people don't know what they really want. They're not willing to sit and honor it, or they've already given up on their dreams. And it doesn't mean we can't get them back. Like we can. It just means that's where we start. So even in the Master Review course, like now, I mean, I redid the curriculum this October based on results, like based on how to help people get to results faster. And I'm always looking at that, like how do we get to results faster? And there's like a 3-week deep dive just into like figuring out what it is that you really want and getting metrics around that. Because often things are buried. Even when people come in, they know exactly what they want. They go through the process, they end up on the other side, and it's not what they started with. So whoever wrote in the chat, like, I need to hear this once or twice, and is there a recording? Yeah, we'll send you guys the recording. Because it is that. And then you need to talk it through with someone who actually understands this stuff, which is why I keep telling you to schedule that with Anna, because you need to talk it through with someone who actually knows what to listen for. And that's usually not someone that hasn't, I'm using double negatives here, that hasn't, if they haven't achieved what you're trying to do, right, then that's not, or they don't understand the process of higher level achievement. So if it's not one of those two things, I wouldn't actually have the conversation with that person. It'll probably be like walking with the ball instead of dribbling. Right? Like it'll just be a turnover, and that dream will start to die. And that's not good. Okay. So here we go. back to some slides. So there's some things that we need to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about where categories reside in terms of pivoting, and it's all connected. So any pivot will affect all 5 points of the star. The elements are on the outside. That's how I kind of figured this out from our Ayurveda. We don't really have to worry about the elements right now. It's more that when you've decided how you want your outcome to be, right, what you really want, then you've got to change everything to make that happen. Because remember, we're assuming that, yes, while you are perfect as you are, you don't have what you want to have yet. And so then you've got to change things. And how you change things is you start to redesign your space for those habits to make that happen. I was just coaching a team member, and I was like, I was concerned because her when we share screens, you can see what's going on someone's desktop and their toolbar and their bookmarks and all that. And it was not organized in a way that she could really focus and succeed. That's space, that's home. That's like, if you're working online, how you're digitally organized really matters. Your entire home environment is reinforcing the person you are right now. Your work environment is reinforcing whatever you've already accomplished. If you want to accomplish new, greater things, gotta up level space, always. It's a basic in habit evolution. And then body, like, what's the body of the person who's done that? You've got to act and make those decisions in your body now. How does that person exercise? How do they eat? How do they sleep? How do they focus? And you've got to organize around that. And that's how you start to hit those higher ambitions. That's the fire, that's the goal. Then you restructure time. How does that person use their calendar? The person who's already done what you're trying to do next, right? The person who's already achieved the metrics that you're trying to achieve next. How do they use time? Because it's not how you use time. And don't take that personally. I never do, right? Like, we're all up against the same battle. The future better version of ourselves who has more capacity, they use time differently. How do they use time? How do they organize their calendar? What hard choices are they making? How are they reprioritizing in order to get that done? And what happens is when we do all those things, we enter a state of flow. And that's a really good feeling. Flow is where skill meets challenge. That's from Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's work. Actually, I have an image of that. Let me grab it. Yeah. So flow is where you have the skill to meet the challenge. So what we've got to get clear on then is, like, what do you actually need to do that? And I'm gonna go for 10 or so more minutes on this, and I want you to be thinking and writing notes down as I go through this. So we get that life is multidimensional, and that designing your life is increasingly complex. So we can't wish it wasn't that way, because it just is. Like, that's just the nature. Like, that's what's going on today. So be it. Okay. But that's the game. That's the game we're all playing. So the problem is distraction, right? We're not kept from our goal. We're kept from our goal not by obstacles, but by a clear path to a lesser goal. I see this all the time. It looks something like this, right? And everyone's up against it. Everybody. Focus is a real problem. So we've got to get really clear of, like, what exactly is the goal, and how do we reshape our space, our habits, and our time so that we can enter a state of flow. Okay, so in order to start to do that, we want to own our current challenges. We want to be really real with what our challenges are right now. And so in this, just write down, like, according to what you've already set out, you have a metric now, like, exactly what are the biggest challenges to you achieving that? Be honest. I posted, those of you who are wellness pros and are in our Wellness Pros Facebook group. And if you're not in there and you're a wellness pro, you're a yoga teacher or body worker or whatever, you work in wellness, just message Anna and she'll get you in there. But I posted something about, I was having these conversations with people, and I kept hearing this, like, I'm afraid of my own success. And I was like, thought about it. I was like, bullshit. You're afraid of sales. anyone ever hears like someone like, especially in small business, they're like, I'm afraid of how big and grand this thing could be. It's like, no, you're afraid of taking the next action to actually make it real and make it happen. Right. And so be clear, like, and the clearer we can get with exactly what are the challenges, like what are the obstacles between us and the next thing, we'll make a better plan. And if we have a better, or we'll use better strategy to make a better plan. And if we have a better plan, we can test it. And that's essentially what we get really good at in the Master of You course, is that iterative process of like figuring out what you want, what are the real issues? Out of the issues, we build the strategy. Out of the strategy, we build the plan, put the plan into real time, test it, it fails, but there's some wins, right? What do we learn? Do it again, and you get good at it. You get good at it like you get good at practicing anything, right? Like basketball. How many free throws did Michael Jordan take a day? Like, I mean, it's crazy. It's iterative. You do the same thing again and again with better form, lessons learned, incorporate what you learn and apply. Okay, so key strengths. We need to know there's certain things that you can apply to your goal that you've already built into strengths. We're going to want to use those. See, now we're getting into strategy because we know what the goal is. What are the lessons learned? Stuff that you don't want to have to learn again. Has anyone ever had to learn the same lesson again and again because you didn't turn it into a strength? Be real with that. That's a critical issue. So now we're going to create some effective strategies based on our current challenges. And I'm going to go back to the pad and draw this out. And then we'll do a little bit more on Q&A. Okay, here we go. All right. So in light of your goal, and all of this is in light of your goal, I'll just make sure that we know that over here. And you have the goal. That's just what you desire. That's what you want. What are your strengths? Like what's going to help you get there? And just write a couple things down. Like what's really, like what do you have dialed in? Maybe it's you have some good core relationships. Maybe you have someone in your life that's already done that, that's willing to help you. Maybe you don't. And maybe that's going to show up in the weakness side. Is like, you just don't know anyone. We find that a lot. We find that a lot with the people that we coach, is like, they just don't have a supportive coach and community that's done that before, that's doing that in real time. So that shows up as a weakness. Maybe you have certain tools or skills that are really going to help. They're good strengths. Maybe you don't have some skills or tools that you know you are going to need. Remember, that's the you and the bigger you, those circles. Yeah. So what are those? Because if you don't have that and you try to pivot, you could end up walking with the ball and getting the turnover. Not good. So you want to be grounded. What are you going to need that you don't have? That's going to show up under weaknesses. It's interesting when I looked at threats, like back when I pivoted my business online, whatever, over a decade ago, I knew at the time that for me to really succeed in the line of work I wanted to do, which is to have a pretty high level conversation. I lived in a really small town, rural Idaho, Wyoming border, 5,000 people. It's like, it's not going to happen here. It's not happening here. So it was a real threat, like just like the pace that the town was growing and where I wanted to live and what I wanted to do with my work. So I had to account for that the kind of work I wanted to do, I could not have and live in a really cool ski town that I wanted to live in. So you want to capture these things. What are some of the opportunities? There's fascinating opportunities right now in the marketplace. A lot of work is pivoting from, even the relationship of work is pivoting a lot, right? A lot more people are going to be contractors than employees. That trend's been happening for 10 years. That trend's predicted to increase. So what are some of the trends that are increasing right now? Businesses are cutting overhead in various ways. The job market's changing. So if any of you have them around career or finance, like you want to look at like what's happening, what are some of the bigger opportunities in the marketplace? And what are some of the bigger threats in the marketplace? Usually opportunities and threats, the way that you do them in an exercise like this is external to you. It's stuff you can't control. You can control your strengths and your weaknesses. You can control your accomplishments and your lessons learned. So what you want to do here is get down just the critical ones that it's like make it, break it based on your goal. So when you meet with Anna, you're going to want to bring these, because she's going to ask you questions and she's going to see what's going on. And then how, if we can help you get to your goal, how we can help you do that. Goals are worth a lot. When I look at like some of the first coaches I worked with and achieving my goals, I'm like, my gosh, thank gosh I did that. Because without that, then those next things wouldn't have happened. And then those next things wouldn't happen. And then those next things would have happened. And that whole process of building capacity, right? Where you're building and what that enables for your future. I'm going to go back to this image. Dun, 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 right? Is you get to dream bigger dreams. And all it really is an iterative process. It's not rocket science, but boy, it does take like anything really worthwhile. It takes overcoming some serious obstacles in order to do it. So it's worth getting, it's really, to me, it's so worth getting good at. This is, what to do and how to do it, right? So part of good strategy is identifying exactly what you're going to need to do to hit your goal. And then what's the best way or how to go about doing that and who's already done that. And that's what you want to focus on in terms of your pivot is like, you don't want to just walk around the court with the ball in your hand. Like you want to intentionally step and know who's done what you're trying to do. All right. So I'll explain one more thing and then we'll go into some Q&A. This is generally the cycle of goal achievement where you're in a place, and some of you might be there now, where you're like, what to do next? That's the person at the top. And it's like, there's certain obstacles and challenges that have led to an unknown place. And they demand next level competencies. And the marketplace does this all the time. The marketplace demands next level competencies of people. Like there's an enormous, you see this right now with schools online, right? Certain teachers are making the pivot, certain teachers really aren't. You see it with businesses online. Certain employees and contractors are making the pivot, certain ones aren't. There's new next level competencies, there's next level skills. We're seeing it in investment too. It's kind of fascinating what's been happening in finance investment markets in the last like 2 weeks. Certain people have competencies that are really paying off right now, right? Other people not so much, and they're just missing this whole land of opportunity. So this is more or less how it works. It even works in terms of body goals. If our body's breaking down, say we have chronic inflammation, #1 cause of disease globally. 3 out of 5 people die from it. Chronic inflammation. It causes heart disease, it causes cancer, it causes lung disease, it causes severe COVID symptoms, it causes autoimmune diseases and immune diseases, it causes diabetes, it causes obesity, right? So there's a breakdown in the system. Well, what are the next level competencies with chronic inflammation? Well, in our Ayurveda, we have a whole list. Like these are the competencies. These are the habits that are the anti-inflammatory habits. And if you don't want to break down, then those are non-negotiable. So then we got to get good at that. You get good at that, what happens? Breakthrough. Feel better than ever. And you know how to change. You know how to change yourself. And that's really the name of the game, right? Because we don't get to stay exactly the same. We get to become better and better versions of ourselves. When that happens, guess what? We start to have bigger goals. I don't just want to not have this disease. I want to actually do something. I want to have a bigger dream. Now I want to be whatever you want to be next. I want to be a community leader. I want to make a bunch of money. I want to do this. I want to start this business. I want to help a friend. I want to do, right? It's bigger you, do it next dreams. And so then what happens is we're back in the cycle of like, yeah, great, awesome. There's new obstacles. There's new challenges. Yeah. And then something's going to have to break down so that you open up enough to learn what you need to learn next. And then when that happens, you have another breakthrough. And that's more or less the cycle. All right. So our invitation is basically to come with notes to your conversation. You can schedule your session at yogahealer.com/conversation. And bring all your issues, like bring what you want to do, your desire, your metrics around that, how you'll know when you've arrived there. And then what are your critical issues with your goal and your time and your life. And that's really how we can help you the most. All right, bam, look at that. I stuck within my time frame. Yes. So I'll stay on for Q&A. So I got to celebrate the small things in life, really, because, right? Why not? If anyone has questions, you can just, you can type your name in the chat and then Anna will unmute you and then we'll go from there. Yeah, and I'll send you my slides. Yeah. Let me or you can even self-unmute because it might be tricky for me to find you.
I think I am unmuted.
Okay, yeah, good.
Hi, I had a question about kind of creating more space around that place where I have an idea of what I want, and then it's that resistance that I feel in my body before I can even cognitively tell like what it is that's telling me, oh, maybe you can't do it, or kind of like working with that resistance to be able to get at these a little bit more.
Yeah, the problem with working with resistance is like whatever you put your attention on grows. It's a basic law in yoga. And so, it's like the people that are having these conversations around fear of success. If you keep talking about fear of success, like you never have to take action, it's great. So if you're focused on the resistance, then you're not focused on the goal. So that's a great strategy for not going anywhere. Which, I mean, that's kind of how the ego works, right? Like our egos in a way are designed for safety. They're designed from what's been made subconscious for efficiency. So we have to be really clear on what we're programming into ourselves. So what's the goal? Let's go there. Let's talk about that. And then we'll see what happens. And we can expect resistance. Like I expect resistance. But I don't pay attention to it.
The ones I was getting a little bit more resistance around was the careers. The other ones I was like, yep, I know what I'm clear on where I want to go there.
Okay.
It's kind of like I live in a small town and I feel
you're putting the how before the what. Yep. Okay. So when that happens, it's like, you could hear it, right? Like you could hear the reasons it's not going to work because what she wants to do, she can't do in a small town. I couldn't either. I get it. So that's trying to figure out how. I was just talking with someone and they wanted it was the divorce, like wanted to get a divorce, couldn't admit it. Like I kind of admit it, but not really. And was trying to strategize around how to keep the family together. What she really wanted was a divorce and to have her own place and still be a good mother. Like those are all great desires. Like no one's going to argue with any of those things, right? But she's trying to figure out how. And so then she couldn't say what it was. So what, and you guys, you can see the advantage, right? Like if you talk to Anna, like she's going to do this to you too. It's like, get clear. Like what do you want to change in your career?
Okay, got it. Yeah.
No,
that
tell
makes
me,
sense.
tell me, just answer. Doesn't have to be right. We're just getting in the ballpark.
What do I want in my career?
Yeah.
I'd like to move out of the career I'm currently in, which is building databases, and do more meaningful work, use my yoga teacher training, and just use that kind of work for more impactful ways around the world.
Okay. Great. So now we know what that is. So now that there's a what, right? Now we can look at how. And so if we know what it is, it's like, well, great. We know what this is. Now, can we put parameters to it? So one of the parameters right there is going to be, well, what's salary replacement? Like how much would you need to make in order to get out of that? We'll just use a number. I'm not going to ask you personally in front of 100 people. So we'll just say, we'll give it a number. We'll say it's $80,000 a year, right? So what does like income replacement at that level doing this look like, right? And now at least we have a ballpark way to start to work with strategy, because there might be skills you're missing. For me, there were skills I was missing, right? Like, I mean, until you've pivoted into whatever, a different business or a different business model, a different business and a different business model, there's a different skill set. Going from being an employee to being a solopreneur, there's a totally different skill set. So that's where it's going to go under strengths, weaknesses. You see how now it's like, oh, now it has a place on the grid. Oh, weakness, entrepreneurship, weakness, sales, weakness, marketing, weakness, online tool, like whatever it is, but it's manageable once it's in there. Like once it's in there, at least we know what we're going to need to build some, now we're going to be able to build a strategy, and maybe we can work with, chances are, if you know how to work with databases, like you're good with data, we are in a data-driven marketing world. So that's an asset, like in a way that like being an Instagram model and like being able to put your foot behind your head in a bikini on the beach in Costa Rica is not an asset, right? So that's how strategy works, is like, I know data and I need tools to run my own business. Okay, great. We've got that. We've got a baby strategy. You know, we got to nurture that baby strategy to grow up, right, into like a super solid plan. Does that help?
Thank you so much. Yes, very much so. Thank you so much.
You bet. You bet. You betcha. I've been watching, truth be told, I've been watching, I love comedians. I think because I'm like a really serious person, like a lot of the time. And so I love like winding down with comedians. And Charlie Berens, do we have any Midwesterners here? United States Midwesterners or Canadian Midwesterners? Okay, Charlie Berens, Behrens. He is so funny. He is so funny. And he always says, you betcha. You betcha. All right. Do we have anyone else in there?
We have
Anna?
another question from Natalie. She'd be interested to hear how you can create space in your home to serve your goals.
Yeah. So not create space, design. So it all goes to design, like designing your life. You're designing your spaces, you're designing your body, you're designing your calendar. Like everything is now needs to get lined up into alignment with the goal. And when you do that, can you see the centeredness of that? Now, like we're pivoting, like we're centered and we're expanding. We're centered and we're stepping into the unknown, but we're not just like running around with the basketball like you see third grade girls doing. No offense to the third grade girls. Third grade boys sometimes do that too. So how does the person who's already achieved that goal, right? You've got to be them. And how, so say, let's go with the inflammation, because everyone, as far as I can tell, we've all got it. Like some of us have a lot more than others. And if you have a lot of it, you gotta get tuned into anti-inflammation. We're actually going to launch a whole new course to help people that have chronic inflammation. Your refrigerator, when you open it, it's got to be an anti-inflammation refrigerator. Like everything in your life has got, like your cabinets, your how you cook, how you meal plan. Like you have to live the life of somebody that doesn't have inflammation, and that's not you. If you have chronic inflammation, so you have to redesign that. So you see how you end up architecting, the term in behavioral science is architecting your environment. It's a good term. So you get to be the architect. And you get to shape the space to reinforce the habits that you want to have. And what happens is it gives you a proclivity towards. It's not a guarantee, but it's a proclivity towards. So say you have tons of junk food in your cabinets. And so you've got like your liquor cabinet and it's just like on full display when you walk into the room. Like that's really going to be hard to overcome if you're a drinker and you like to eat chips while you drink, right? Because your environment is architected to give your body more inflammation than it can tolerate. So how do you need to change that? And it's true of any goal. So for instance, if we go back to Lael's goal, right? Like she's going to need to have entrepreneurial, like yoga teacher, like we should send Lael our ebook, my Wellness Pros Successful Career ebook, and then study that thing, like print 5 copies of it, put one in the bathroom, put one in the kitchen, put one in, give one to your best friend and say, ask me a question, quiz me on this. Like you put it into your environment, what you're trying to become, you put it into your environment. And you put it into your environment in such a way that you can't get away from it, right? So if you need to have a celery diet to decrease your inflammation for a while, let's just say that you're like, oh, the celery thing, that medical medium, he keeps talking about it. Like when you open your refrigerator, you should see celery. When you have, on your calendar, you should time block to make your celery juice. This is a bad example, but you get my point. Like that's the kind of decision-making that someone who's cleared the inflammation out of their body, those are the decisions that they've made and followed through on. This goes into project management tools. It goes into calendar tools, stuff like time blocking, all that. Like how you architect your time is very much right now. I mean, it's very digital for a lot of us, right? And so when you open a calendar, is your time architected to achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve? And if it's not, it's working against you. If something's not working for who you're trying to become, assume with full confidence it's working against you. It's creating inefficiencies. The more inefficiencies there are, the more you feel overwhelmed and less in control of your time and less able to achieve your dreams. So what we find in this process is soon, like a lot of people that have been through Master Review for a while, they're like, well, I've got some time. Like I can choose how I use time. And it's so liberating to be in time freedom, let alone financial freedom. Okay, cool. Any last things before we part? Looks like there's a few requests for Wellness Pro ebook, so that's good. And Anna, we'll make sure you get the chat. You guys are welcome. I'm glad it's helpful. It was fun to look into those words. I've got to say, when I was thinking about pivot, I noticed so much ungroundedness around me, like overwhelm and ungroundedness, where it's like people are overwhelmed with what they've got to do to get through each day to meet their current responsibilities. And then the idea of pivot is like, there's something better on the other side of the fence, right? The grass is always greener. And that's not how we pivot. Like we get centered. This is what we want. We improve ourselves right here. We get so clear in what we want. We know that in terms of a metric. And then, hey, what are your strengths and weaknesses? And some of those are going to come from your accomplishments. Some of them are going to come from your lessons learned. What are your reoccurring critical issues? Those are showing up on your weaknesses list, right? It's like if it keeps coming up again and again and again, it's showing up on your weaknesses list because it's clearly getting in the way. And that's got to be built into the strategy. That's something that you're going to need to overcome. How are you going to overcome it? Find someone who doesn't have that issue or it's overcome that issue and knows how to get through it. Coach you through it. You may have to pay for that relationship. It's a good investment. You don't want to keep having the same issues, I promise. right? That's recipe for staying stuck. What are the opportunities? What are the threats? Like get them down. And then from there, you start to build like, oh, that's where you start to build strategy from. All right. We'll send you a follow-up email with a recording. If there's someone that you think it would be helpful for, please send it to them. You know, sometimes just having some hope can help some people right now. Awesome. Any closing thoughts? You can just self-unmute anything you want to share, please.
Thank you. It's been amazing. Thank you very much, Cate. Really, really inspiring.
Oh, you're welcome, Natalie. I'm so glad. Cool. Anna, anything before we wrap? We good?
Yeah, I've had lots of great chats today. Looking forward to sending those who are interested their Well Pro ebook. Lots of great strategy in there for sure.
Sweet. All right. Have fun, you guys, figuring out exactly what you want. It's your life. Design your life the way you want. Yeah, get super serious about that. And anytime you're coming up with time delays, like, I don't think I can do this, like get on the phone with Anna. Like, let's figure out how you can do what you want to do now. Now, that's Ata. It's the first word in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, written 2,000 years ago. The first word is Ata, means now. So now we do yoga, right? Now we live our life on purpose. All right. Thank you all. Again, Cate Stillman signing off, Yoga Healer. Have a great day. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Go team. And thanks the team for
Thank
putting this
you.
together.
Thanks, Cate.
You bet.
Thanks so much, Cate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Cate.
you so much.
Amazing.
Beautiful.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Blessings.
Ata,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it. Ata.
Namaste.
Ciao.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Oh,
Aloha.
aloha.
Aloha.